Hey guys, we're back for another Boba Jew.
What's going, everybody?
There's no secret what this week's topic is.
Well, look, we had to. It's a major mega event. We couldn't be doing any teases or anything like that. We just had to get straight into it. It's bigger and badder than ever before.
If you like wrestling, you should definitely stick around.
Stick around.
And I'm going to chuck up the first one here, and I'll get you to read about the event or venue here.
Okay, so we're here, folks, for this third installment of WrestleMania 3. So WrestleMania 3 is famous for setting an indoor attendance record at the time with over 93,000 fans in attendance. We'll put a little asterisk beside that number.
Yeah, I'm going to do a sidebar, so I'm getting you to read this first.
So the event is known for its iconic moments, including the colossal clash between Hogan and Andre the Giant and a technical masterpiece between Steamboat and Macho Man Randy Savage. So WrestleMania 3 included celebrities like Alice Cooper, who accompanied Jake Snake Roberts to the ring, and Aretha Franklin, who sang America the Beautiful to kick off the event.
Indeed, she did. But yeah, that number about this 93,000, I mean, when I was just putting the show bits together, I read that and thought, well, it's on the internet, so it must be true. But then two things came up. One is that I was listening to the Jim Cornette podcast this week, and he was talking about different WrestleManias and how they inflated the numbers of the early ones to get certain records and make it sound just to get a little bit more cream on the top of the actual number. So the real number was saying that they claimed it was 93,000, which would have made it the largest crowd for a WWF event. And I'm just reading off the article here, and it says the actual number was closest to 78,000, but it was still a fairly high. It's still a shitload of people. And in terms of like cable TV and pay-per-views and dollars made, they still set some other, records for themselves. But had to be just that bit greedy and inflate the numbers.
Exactly. Like it was a massive success, a mega success, but they still had to exaggerate just how good it was. But I think it was debunked pretty early on that they could not have hit anywhere, or at least close to that 93,000, because I think at the time that building physically could not have held that amount of people. I think at a maximum you would have been talking about in the 80s to mid 80s of thousands. So for them to have supposedly had 93,000 people there, geez, there must have been people like sitting on top of each other. And
do they include Jesse Ventura and Gorilla Monsoon? Because that's another two people. Maybe they didn't count them.
Oh, they're including anybody. They're including people who are just standing across the street looking over.
Yeah, people in the car park, the neighbors and down the road. People that thought about going will include them. But just before we go on to the next one, I'll just read out. It went all blurry in my slide for some reason. I just pinched off Wikipedia. It had a nice little block telling us who all the people were doing the thing. So on commentators, we had Gorilla Monsoon, Jesse the Body Ventura, Bob Uecker, Mary Hart, not a member of the Hart family, surprisingly, Bobby the Brain Heenan, And in the interviewing segments, we had Mean Gene, of course. Vince was in there. Mary Hart again. Ring announcer Howard Finkel, or the Fink. And referees, we had John Bonello, Dave Hebner, Jack Kruger, Jack Lotz, Joey Morella. Mary Hart was also timekeeper. She was doing like triple duties, apparently. Of course, we had Aretha Franklin, already mentioned. And then we also had Alice Cooper preparing in the corner of Jake Roberts, that we'll see later on. And I like, at least in that match, that he actually gets into the ring and doesn't just hang around the outside or in the interview segments like some of the Wrestlemania 2 celebs that didn't do much.
Yeah, Alice Cooper blows Ozzy Osbourne out of the water when it comes to their involvement in WrestleManias.
And they make some. He's extremely heroin chic when you see him too, and they reference it too during the match, like, oh yeah, look at his muscles or whatever. He's been doing all the weights.
Been hitting the gym.
Yeah, but yeah, we got our first actual opening match here.
Yes, the Can-Am connection. Do you know what the Can-Am connection
No, you have to
stands for?
explain what they can, because some of these guys in the 80s, they change from one tag team to another in different alliances. I can't keep track of half of it. So what's the Can-Am connection?
So the Can-Am connection is short for the Canadian American connection. That's what it's supposed to be. So and I think Can-Am, it might be a play off like an airlines, Canada
Yeah,
to
or Pan
America
Am. Yeah, that makes
Airlines.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so Can-Am connection, and it's Rick Martel and it's Tom Zenk, and they're actually they're quite the tag team, an energetic young tag team going up against old Cowboy
Yeah.
Bob and Magnificent Morocco here.
It's like the
The
youngsters
funny
and the
thing
old
about
fellas.
I could sense, now maybe I'm wrong, but I could sense a little bit of possible confusion with you when we were talking about Can-Am there for a second, because you mentioned about guys switching tag teams. It would be quite easy to get mixed up between the Can-Am connection and a tag team that came about just a couple of months later called Strike Force, which was
Oh yes, they
Rick
were in. I
Martel
think they're
and
in Mania
Tito
4. Because I was
Santana.
looking at that earlier.
Yes, and the whole reason that came about is because the Can-Am connection, as talented as they are and as much chemistry as they physically have together between the ropes, apparently in real life they did not get along at all. They were tag team partners that literally hated each other. And shortly after this, Tom Zenk actually left the WWF and went to the WCW, and that's why Martel was later teamed up with Tito to form the Strike Force team. But if you were to look at
I've
a
seen
picture
more
of
of.
well, you've probably
Yeah,
seen more of Strike Force, so it would make
I know. I
sense.
was going
But
to say
I
I've
was just
seen
going to
more.
say,
I've seen more of Martel when he was solo in the early '90s on Raw and that. And
yeah, and Martel, he had a massive singles run even prior to coming to the WWF in the AWA. He was quite the established single star,
yes.
but there's definitely a lot of they're very interchangeable in terms of appearance. The Can-Am connection and the team of Strike Force later on. Like if you were to look at pictures of both, you'd easily get both teams mixed up. They just all it's just guys that all have bushy black hair and good
Yeah.
physiques wearing high trunks, you know. But of course, they're
Especially if it's
opposing
a lower
team.
grade video.
Yeah. But we got Bob Orton, of course, who's a veteran now in our WrestleMania
Yeah.
reviews, because
Yeah, I got a cool
he's
action
usually
figure of
hanging
him a few
around it.
months ago.
We'd usually have seen him with Piper in the last two manias, but here he's teaming with the original Rock, Magnificent Morocco in this opening tag match. What do you think of this tag match?
I think it's a reasonable opener one. Like it's not show stealer or nothing, but it's dynamic, it's exciting. That especially the younger guys are putting on more more athletic moves than that, whereas the old timers, of course, are getting a bit slower, but still decent quality wrestlers. I found it entertaining and probably a nicer opening than WrestleMania 2's opening.
Oh yeah, we might be saying that a lot for this show if we're
We'll
comparing
just be slagging off WrestleMania
between,
2 the whole episode.
because I suppose we kind of in your kind of first slide there when we saw that shot of the arena, we kind of have quickly glossed over the fact that this is a major visual upgrade from what we've seen with
Yeah,
the previous two
and they're in
manias.
one
Like this
venue
really
rather than
does,
multiple venues.
yes, which makes a difference. But really just
And that one guy on the
looking at
right
that
side is
that
really
shot,
excited to be there, man. It's like,
yeah, it's like, yeah,
can you imagine
you
if
can barely
you were
see
that
your
guy
name.
in that photo? You'd better recognize yourself from that. Like you'd definitely know if it was you in that photo from back then.
Think about it though, right? Because like, look at how small the ring looks
Yeah, little
from
ants,
where
little
that
dot.
shot is taken, and even the big screens. The big screens aren't that big when you're all the
No,
way
not,
over there.
no Titantron back then.
Yeah, yeah. These people, they were just excited to see these little ants
I,
moving.
I always feel bad for the people who have to set up these damn things for wrestling because when they're doing a football or a baseball game or whatever the hell they're normally doing, these giant stadiums they built them for, you've got a field or a middle section that's empty where you have sport going on. And not that we're knocking wrestling here, but but now the crowd's all the way down into the middle, and you've got this tiny little square instead of a giant. So I feel bad for the guys who have to set up all these bloody seats and the whole thing and all the extra stuff that's not normally in the middle. A lot of work.
Yeah. Well, I really hope they are the cheap seats because I wouldn't like to be paying big money to sit all the way back there.
Yeah, but yeah, it's an
Definitely,
amazing looking venue.
oh, it's amazing, amazing. Just a sea of people, and
And there's a commentators hiding behind the two annoying guys on YouTube who are now talking over the wrestling.
I want to get one of those WrestleMania 3 T-shirts that Jesse
Yeah,
has on there.
yeah,
Pretty
I
cool.
grabbed that little shot because he turns and just briefly, where it's not blurred, and points at it. Is like, you can get one, be getting one of these shirts, and like they were definitely, selling them there and all that. And,
Yeah, has to plug the merch, Jesse.
yeah, it's funny seeing him in a regular, just any kind of regular clothing. Actually,
It is, isn't
not
it?
when it was
He's
weird
usually wearing
outfits.
like a, yeah, no kind of like hassle covered jacket with sequence
Yeah,
diamonds or
yeah.
stuff. It's just, yeah, a
He
T-shirt.
looks like he's about to be hanging out on a street corner, turning out some ladies with some tricks or something. Some outfits. But yeah, we'll go on to the next one. We got the Full Nelson Challenge with Billy Jack Haynes versus Hercules. Went to a double counter, and they do have a lot of weird match modifiers all throughout the kind of theme of this Mania 3, like different win conditions. They seem to like a bit of a roulette wheel of like we're just going to pick things and put them on these matches.
Yeah, and a lot of I don't even know. You could call them stipulations, or maybe,
Mm,
yeah, it's just these kind of, yeah, qualifiers, because it's a they keep referring to this match as a full Nelson challenge, which would
yeah,
make you assume that you must actually apply the full Nelson hold
yeah,
on your opponent and get him to give up. But multiple times throughout the match, it's just like fought like a normal match because they're trying to pin each other
pretty
after
much.
doing like a suplex, and
Maybe the challenge is,
so
do they actually know how to do the move?
yeah, yeah, they keep going to try to win the match in other ways. And yeah, look, the
Mm,
fact that the match ends in a double countout in itself kind of proves that there
yeah.
was really kind of no special
It's a strange
stipulation. But
one because, like, you don't typically see someone submitting to something like a full Nelson. It's not something, if it's a figure four leg lock or something, yeah, they got to tap it, but you don't usually see someone submitting for something like that. So it's kind of, I don't really get the challenge.
both of the guys, though, both Hart and Billy Jack, are seriously jacked and stacked. These are
Yeah,
a
they
couple of like
are.
beefy monster men. Just a
They're very
big
beefy.
boss fight.
They definitely
Hercules is
like tickling
funny.
each other, as we can see here.
I think it's funny. I think in the interview before this match, like, Hercules is actually, he's talking about himself as if he is actually the legendary Greek
Yeah, the
Hercules.
legendary.
Because he's like, I've got these chains, and these chains, they pull down the pillars and the gods, and
Yeah, I
I've got
remember
the
that.
power of the gods. And, you're kind of thinking like, is this guy, is this gimmick supposed to be that he's actually the Hercules? As it
Yeah, the
seems like,
Hercules, not just a Hercules.
he's making multiple references to that guy, so you're thinking, what's going on here with Hart? Maybe he's just been indulging in certain activities, and he's gotten a bit confused as to who he actually is. He's not just Hercules Hernandez.
He's time traveling within his own mind.
But yeah, it's two big beefy studs knocking the shit out of each other.
Yeah,
and it's actually it's a
definitely
pretty
very
inventive.
impressive bodybuilder types.
I do actually kind of like the finish. It's kind of inventive, even though it is a bit weird that they both get counted out, just because Billy Jack actually does manage to get the full Nelson on him, but they both fall through the ropes. So he still has the hold applied outside of the ring while the ref is doing the count at the end of the match.
Yeah.
So it's a clever way to get out of the match without either man having to lose, which is usually the reason for these weird finishes. That like both guys kind of need to win, or so we just need to come up with a way of getting them out the other side of it without one guy looking too bad.
Yeah, it's the old classic wrestling trick is like, well, this guy can't win or lose. How do you make them both look good or both not look too bad? Do countouts and disqualifications.
And in the case of poor Billy Jack, it wouldn't matter anyway because he'd be out the door shortly after. He never really got much of a big run in the WWF after this. I just don't think he, depending on what interviews you kind of listen to, he either didn't get along with anybody or he just was a bit crazy and took himself a bit too seriously to get on with people. So he didn't last too long. He cuts a little bit of a tragic figure, Billy Jack. I won't go into too much detail here, but I would just say that if anybody wants to kind of Google the life and times of Billy Jack, prepare for a grim read.
So did he when he left? Did he go back to some other territories, or was he just out altogether?
He was knocking about the business for a little while on a small scale, and then he ended up leaving the business for a few years altogether. And one story that sticks out in my mind about Billy Jack, and it's a pretty kind of cruel and sad tale, is that apparently in either the late 90s or early 2000s, some member of the WWF office actually did a horrible prank on him where they got in contact with his on his phone and left a message saying that the WWF were willing to give him another tryout to give him a job. So the poor guy turns up at whatever arena they're doing the show at, and then they just totally like ghost him. They don't let him into the building, and it was all just a big. And it is very cruel, but apparently, as the story goes, one of the referees who was on duty that night saw Billy Jack going back to his car and going to take a shotgun out of the trunk of the car because he was pretty pissed off about what had just happened. And as the story goes, the referee recognized him, kind of knew what had happened, saw what he was going to do, and talked them down. And that's one of those things where a stupid, cruel prank might have, almost changed the entire history of the wrestling business. If Billy Jack had went back into that building and found Vince McMahon and a couple of guys in the office who'd just done that to him, who knows what would have happened. But yeah, look, it was we're going off on a complete tangent. Yeah, but that's my little Billy Jack anecdote. He didn't have an easy life, let's put it that way.
Yeah, that'll be an episode for another time. All the crazy behind the scenes stories of people like Harley Race bringing guns to places and other people doing crazy shit. So this one is the kind of a nonsense match.
It isn't a nonsense match, and
it's entertaining.
What do you think it is, Johnny? Match. How do you feel about King Kong Bundy being in the match like this after headlining the show?
It's definitely a visual gag. We've got the small fellas that I will say in context, like when you're watching it, they keep referring to them as midgets, but we don't use that language now. We've got different terminology that's more kind to people, and it's a funny thing, the kind of history of smaller folk in wrestling, because in many ways it comes from the old carnival circus days. It's very exploitative. But in other ways, some of the guys that went into this really enjoyed it and got to be in the spotlight and do stuff they otherwise wouldn't be doing. So it's a kind of weird thing to look back on. But yeah, it's definitely a visual gag. So you've got a big, the guy who's not Andre the Giant, who's wearing the Andre the Giant outfit and not quite as big, but still a massive, massive big man, and another big man with old bloody hillbilly Jim back there wrestling these guys that are like the size of his leg, pretty much. And so, he could knock them around easy as. There's no real competition or wrestling. It's definitely very much a gag match or a visual spectacle for the audience to kind of have a joke about.
Feel bad for Little Beaver though at the end when he actually takes that elbow drop. From what I
Yeah.
now, I'm not sure how true this is, but I think even Bundy might have said it in an interview before where he didn't he didn't intend to actually drop the elbow on him for that finish. Apparently, the other smaller people were supposed to move him just at the last second, so he'd kind of missed the
Yeah.
elbow, and then they were still going to get DQ'd somehow, but not like that. But apparently, when he goes to go off the ropes and drop the elbow, the other guys are just nowhere near him to move
Mm-hmm.
Little Beaver, so he can't just stop doing what he's doing because otherwise it would totally look completely phony and
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah.
So he just goes ahead and drops the elbow. And even though, he's a professional wrestler and he's trying to not hurt his opponent, at the end of the day, he's a guy who weighs in excess of 400 pounds, dropping an elbow on a person maybe like 1/8 of his size.
Yeah.
And apparently, this was one of the Little Beaver's last matches, and he cited that the kind of rattling that he took from taking that elbow pretty much, ended his career. He said he couldn't really do much
Yeah.
more physical stuff after that. So, as kind of visually kind of funny as it is to look at, it's kind of crazy to think that one guy got kind of seriously messed up just from that one spot in the match of him dropping the elbow at the end.
Yeah,
And
it was a strange match, very much of the times, or even I wouldn't say of the times. It feels more like something you might have still seen in Mexico or in '70s wrestling in the South. It wasn't something you typically see in other WrestleManias.
just like that as well. I just think Hillbilly Jim sucks. I thought he sucked when we were watching WrestleMania 2 the last time. I think he sucks here too. I just can't. I just could never get into him. He looks physically imposing and physically good,
Mm.
but he's just so stupid. And he always seems to just mess up all his any stuff he tries to do. He's always in like the wrong place or doing something awkward. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah.
Not the most
I just
technical athlete of the bunch, but
yeah.
speaking of good physical specimens, we got the old JYD here
Oh
and
yeah.
Harley Race. He's getting a bit older, but he's still fairly solid fella. I wouldn't want to mess with him on his worst day.
Oh yeah. I'm glad that these two guys, definitely both legends in their own respect, got to have
Yeah,
a feature match on this big wrestling mega event because like JYD, legendary competitor, and Harley Race, a
I'd love to
true
have action figures
true
of both
legend.
these two.
Yeah, I need a junkyard dog and a
Mm.
decent Harley Race as well.
There's a Harley
And like
Race
you're saying,
re-release coming out in the next few months. I think early next year, and I think it might be the King version, where he's the nonsense about how they called him the King, falsely advertising that was going to be like Lawler, but it was Harley Race.
at least though if they release that kind of version of him, at least you can just remove all the king garb and
Yeah,
you have
take it off and just have
your
this
normal
version. Yeah.
looking your normal looking Harley Race. But
Or you have to
yeah, look,
find
as
a
you
gun
mentioned,
from elsewhere, from other accessories.
a gun and a bottle of bourbon.
Yeah, bottle of bourbon.
But I suppose, look, like you said, they're getting a bit older, obviously at this stage. Junkyard Dog is definitely having his health issues. You can see he was
Yeah,
looking kind of okay at WrestleMania 2, but he's kind of now at WrestleMania 3. You can see he's just looking a little bit tired, maybe a little bit out of shape. Credit
yeah,
though
he's
to
still
both of
strong, but
them.
he's definitely getting flabbier and a bit out of condition and older. And yeah,
Both guys though still move around very naturally, and
yeah,
Harley Race especially, like that guy he can really just bump and move. The amount of times he flips over ropes and falls outside the ring, and everything's always just perfectly timed with him. The way he can just be in the right place at the right time to take the next move, to move to the next
Yeah, like
spot.
Dusty or Ric Flair, just the timing is amazing.
Just so natural. And there's something about these guys. I know we probably mentioned it when we covered Mania 1 and 2, and we talk about guys like Harley and Adrian Adonis and these type of guys who take those kind of Ric Flair style. It's really like exaggerated. Like, if you're
Yeah.
falling backwards, but you're also flailing your arms and legs out. So it's
Yeah.
so even if you're the guy who's sitting way, 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 way back at the very end of the arena, you could still probably tell by the body language of kind of what's going on that there's this kind of, craziness going on in the ring. I'll always be appreciative of that type of physical effort that guys like Race put into actually taking moves as opposed to giving moves. They really know how to make a move seem impactful. And speaking of
Yeah, like some
impactful,
guys are great at that, like the old smashing the head into the turnbuckle or the delayed effect where they get smacked and they kind of pause and then, all of a sudden they fall down.
well, look, man, speaking of smashing your head, there's a part of this match that I think the camera kind of mostly misses, but fucking Harley Race does his diving headbutt off the ring apron to
Yeah,
the outside where Junkyard Dog is, but Junkyard moves and he just hits the mat. But
yeah,
like
he moves.
the
Did he,
camera,
did he hit the
the
barrier or
camera's
something?
looking at the audience. Yeah, you can't really see what's going on. I was like, oh, poor Harley. Like that was probably one of the most painful bumps or moments in that match, and the camera didn't actually catch it. And if you think of how old he is, even then, to be literally just dropping yourself head first onto a mat on the outside of the ring, he's one tough
Yeah,
bastard, Harley Race.
there he is for sure. So we'll go on to our next one. We have the Dream Team. Brutus Beefcake, Greg the Hammer Valentine with Luscious Johnny in the corner, Valiant in the corner, and Dino Bravo, who defeat the, I don't know, how do you say the how do you say the Rougeau brothers?
I would say the Rougeaus, yes, the Rougeau
Yeah,
brothers.
some
I would
French,
say
I assume.
the French Canadians, yes. So this match is
What
significant
are
to me
jackets?
because in WrestleMania, when we spoke in WrestleMania 1 and 2, I actually heaped praise upon Brutus Beefcake for his ring attire and overall look, and the fact that he's actually
Yeah, he got his
involved in,
jackets in the corner.
and plus he's in a good match in WrestleMania 2 against the Bulldogs, and he's having a good run. This though for me kind of marks the end of my my love for Brutus Beefcake, because this is going to be the night where he actually finally turns babyface and begins the Brutus the Barber gimmick. So I never really was into him as Brutus the Barber. I always preferred him as this kind of heel egomaniac in his kind of
Yeah,
flashy gear and stuff. So in a way I'm sad when I watch this match, because it's the last time I'm really going to enjoy Beefcake. When you hear, if we review any other manias after this, you're probably not going to hear too many nice things about Beefcake coming
yeah.
out of my mouth. But
Next year he'll just be on the trading cards with that terrible bubble gum where he's always got
yeah,
the clipping
yeah, got his
shears.
shears there, yeah. But
That's I
of
remember
course
seeing those cards and posters as a kid.
we love Greg Valentine though. He's excellent in this match
Yeah,
as always. And
he's
the
done
Rougeau
it all.
brothers are a
Wrestled a
good team.
Flair in the '70s and done everything.
He still looks in good physical condition here, Valentine as well. And just like with Harley in the last match, this dude can seriously bump and move around the
Oh
ring.
yeah,
Like the Rougeaus are a very
don't
good
call him the
tag
Hammer for
team
nothing.
as well. Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, I actually I like this match, and like I said, it's probably going to be my last hurrah for my love for Brutus. But apart from that, it's a well worked match. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it, and like again, I've probably seen when he does become Brutus with the Clippers. I've seen more stuff post after this than before it. Valentine, I've seen bits of '70s, '80s, '90s, even in the '90s. I think it was going in WCW and that. And always enjoy his matches. The other guys, the Rougeau brothers, I don't think I've seen them outside of this match because I haven't So I've got no context for them, but the other guys I've seen a reasonable amount of times. But definitely enjoyable match, and they definitely figured out their little go-kart scooter things, whatever the hell they power those blue mini rings all the way up to the entrance. They had troubles with in previous years where it was too slow, so much so that when one of them, Piper, had enough and just like sprinted all the way out there and didn't want to get on the stupid cart. They seem to have figured out the mechanics of that because they power out there real nice and fast, and you get good shots of the guys coming out wearing their fantastic, fabulous, flamboyant outfits and putting on a good show and good spectacle, and definitely good entertainment. No, it's definitely an enjoyable match.
Yeah, I think even at this kind of, I suppose we're nearly through like the first third of the show or whatever.
Yeah,
It's a long show, but it seems to move at a quicker pace than WrestleMania one
yeah,
and
they're fairly
two.
short matches, like 9 minutes, 10 minutes, a lot of them.
And the matches all seem like they have a reason to be there. On Mania
Mm.
1 and 2, there was a few squash matches where it was just guys literally just
Yeah,
killing jobbers. Whereas now we actually have a show that seems to be full of matches where there's been like a build up to every match and a story to every
yeah,
match. So it feels like every moment you're watching actually means something.
it does, and it's sometimes it's tricky watching manias out of context because there was always the monthly or couple of months build up on the local shows and then the promos, and sometimes when you get like on the streaming networks or DVD, sometimes they're missing some of that context to get like what was the build up, the storyline that went along building up to it. But yeah, enjoyable match. And next one we had Rowdy Roddy Piper, who defeats adorable Adrian Adonis with Jimmy Hart in the corner.
Oh yeah. In his retirement match, Roddy Piper's
Yeah, yeah, that's
retirement match.
right.
The retirement match stipulation has to be the most abused stipulation in wrestling. Nobody ever stays
Hmm,
retired in wrestling, and
that's
thank
true.
God it
Like,
wasn't.
well, Piper was trying to use the leverage to he famously was like a heel and didn't want to lose to this guy or that guy. And, his argument was, well, once I lose to him and him, what's Vince going to do with me? He's just going to throw me away like yesterday's trash, which he's done to so many fucking other wrestlers. And so, he was always looking for leverage into what's he actually going to do because, he has more straight wrestling matches in the territories before he comes into WWF. And then once he does come in, he becomes this kind of well, surprise icon down the track where they didn't expect him to get so big. I mean, like in the modern era, like a Stone Cold, they didn't expect him to get so big, but he blew up, and they had to go with it because he became so popular. They had to give him something of what he wants and put him in some matches. Otherwise, where was his career going to go? And he had to, had to feed his family like everyone else does.
Yeah, and he'd earned it as well. I think
Oh, for sure, definitely earned it. But his career could have ended
at
at
that
several
point,
stages in the mid '80s, and nearly did. Like when I read his book and
oh yeah,
that several times, he was nearly out.
we're kind of at this point, I suppose, as well in the '80s, we're at the phase where wrestling fans just aren't always going to boo the heel solely because he's a heel. With guys like
Mm,
Piper and as you'd see down south with Flair, even though they were heels, they were kind of so cool that even though they were the bad guys, you eventually ended up liking them anyway, no matter what
yeah,
dastardly kind of thing they got up to. And I think that really kind of, we might have seen it a little bit with WrestleMania 2, you could kind of tell that when Piper's fighting Mr. T, that the crowd are kind of nearly more with Piper than they are with Mr. T, even though Mr. T is supposed to
yeah,
be the good guy. And look, I suppose the natural evolution of that is where we get to with this match between Piper and adorable Adrian, because at this point there is no denying that Piper is a fan favorite. He's absolutely
yeah,
adored by this audience. And as much as Piper is adored, Adrian Adonis is absolutely despised. The crowd
yeah.
absolutely
That's
hate him.
true.
But I think as
And like,
well, we kind of mentioned last time when we were talking about Mania 2 with Adrian, he doesn't look like somebody who should be able to even walk well, let alone move
Yeah,
in a wrestling ring. But he's incredibly agile for a man his size.
yeah, he's definitely getting flabbier here, but he still moves like a bloody ballerina or something. He dances around. I mean, but also like a wrestler, he can slam and hurt you, but he's also light on his feet and flips around and very, very agile, amazing athlete the way he moves.
Yeah, it's he's a good foil for Piper as well because Piper has that kind
Yeah,
of frantic energy to him where he's constantly grabbing you and
I
punching
really
you, and
enjoyed this
because
match.
Adrian's so good at taking those bumps as well, where anytime Piper's on him, it just looks like he's just killing him, and Adrian's like falling outside the ring trying to escape, and Piper just keeps grabbing him and pulling him back in. Of course, as well in the aftermath, we see the completion of the babyface turn for Brutus the
Yep.
Barber, or Brutus. Well, he becomes Brutus the Barber here because
Yeah.
Adrian tries to do a runner, but he's dragged back in, and he gets a little chop. He gets the locks chopped a little bit.
He
Piper
doesn't
has
get a
played the
whole lot
one.
of hair off. They don't quite do a
No,
CM Punk where he's nearly bald, you know. They get a few off, and then it's like, okay, we've got to get the next match on.
Piper looks like he's having good time though. He's holding the mirror up to him at the end, and
Yeah,
Adrian's
yeah,
freaking
yeah,
out.
that's great.
You know what I actually what I absolutely love about the very end of this match is that a fan actually runs into the ring and hugs Piper, and you only see it for like 5 seconds because the camera has to cut away. So Piper's there, he's got his arms up in the air, and next thing you see somebody run up to him and kind of turning him around. And Piper obviously turns around thinking it's going to be like the referee or somebody, and then he just realizes it's some fan who's jumped the rail, and they both give each
Who
other a
didn't
big
attack
hug.
him for once,
Yeah, yeah, and he hugs
not
him,
stabbing him.
which is cool. Yeah, and I just thought that was a really nice moment because like obviously I suppose at the end of the match they do announce that it's his farewell, so that guy probably thought shit like I'll never see
Hmm.
Roddy again, and then he was caught up in the emotion. He just hopped the
That's
barrier
great.
and gave him a
Yeah,
hug.
I
Yeah,
didn't see that clip in there. Like it whizzed by me, because I was watching on my
it's so
tablet, not
quick.
on the big
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah, it literally like it's 4 or 5 seconds. If you ever go back and watch the end of the match again, you'll see it. It's just
Mhm.
so yeah, you see Roddy hugging a random dude in the
Yeah,
ring. It's
oh,
just a
that's
great
awesome.
little moment.
Yeah, like Piper, like it was one of his semi first retirements, but it was also using the leverage to have I don't know time with his family and whatnot, and arguments with Vince about what they're going to do with his career and is he going to fight Hogan again, all this, and it reminds me of in the '90s the whole Shawn Michaels Bret Hart stuff where it's like one guy's the popular guy, another guy's coming up, and they can't really quite commit to like, well, what's the logical progression of the matches, and eventually someone's got to go, well, I'm leaving or I'm going to bloody WCW's end up being the solution.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you have to kind of look at it, I suppose, from the point of view of it is a business, and you do have to look
Yeah.
after your own interests, and
Mm.
it's a little bit different. Modern fans, I think, kind of struggle with the idea of kind of wrestlers being maybe kind of selfish and looking out for themselves, but you have to look at it from the point of view
Well,
of
no one else
back
is going to do
then.
it.
Yeah, you were only worth what money you could draw, so
Yeah.
you
No
had to
health
really do.
insurance, no
Yeah,
holiday pay, nothing.
you needed to be able to protect yourself. So whether that meant protecting yourself in the ring or protecting yourself as a businessman, you needed to make sure that you're always in a position
Mm.
to be able to make money
And
and
most
look after your family.
and the majority of wrestlers made less money than working normal jobs. Only the guys in the upper tier earned normal job or above that money. So, and you're getting no health insurance, no holiday pay, and if you're injured, you're not earning any damn money. So you can be bankrupt really fast and lose your house and lose your family and lose bloody everything.
True, true. This next match, though, on a lighter note, it's a quality match. Before this match actually
Yeah,
starts, they give Jesse Ventura an in-ring introduction. He just comes down from
yeah,
the
that's
commentary
weird.
booth and he flexes his muscles, and yeah, it just a kind of it's a nice moment, I suppose, for Jesse to get out in front of the crowd and get a few cheers. Um, I think during this match as well, they also mentioned Predator a couple of times
Yeah,
on
they do.
commentary.
I think
So they
that's.
thought
I
he
guess
was
that's why he comes in, because they do then mention Predator.
so. This match, it's interesting. So it's a 6-man tag match, and a lot of people, when they look back in this show, they will sometimes ask, like, why is this match a 6-man tag match and not just a tag match
Yeah,
between the Hart Foundation and the British Bulldogs for the tag team belts? And the answer simply is Dynamite Kid is not in good physical condition during this period of time, and the company, they didn't actually feel he'd be physically able to go in a normal tag match. So they added a couple extra players in the form of Tito Santana and Danny Davis to kind of get a bit of
uh-huh.
smoke and mirrors going, because you'll notice in this match, even though he does well doing the parts he's supposed to do in the match, Dynamite Kid mostly in this match is just kind of taking a beating and lying down, whereas usually you'd see him doing a lot of high flying moves and
Yeah, yeah,
all sorts of kind of high impact stuff. In this match, he really is visibly kind of taking it easier than he usually would, because his body, his back in particular at this point is breaking down from injury. But with that being said, this match is very entertaining, and the audience, the crowd, are just obsessed with the idea of former crooked referee Danny Davis getting the shit beat out of him, because anytime he gets in the ring and one of the good guys gets their hands on him, the crowd just go mad. They really, really want him to just get murdered in the ring. British Bulldog does a killer jumping tombstone pile driver on him at one point as well, which just looks like it would kill a normal man, but somehow
yeah. I imagine it would.
he manages to survive. And actually, yeah, but yeah. So the Bulldogs and Tito end up losing, which is a bit of a shocker. And what's more of a shocker is that Danny Davis is the man, I think, who gets the winning pinfall, which sends the audience into an even angrier frenzy, because now the guy that they wanted to see get the shit beat out of him has actually gone and won the match. Which is one of those things I love about wrestling, because they can just totally take the audience on this roller coaster ride and still not give them what they want at the end. It's just they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's true. It's. I mean, it's. I like hearing the context there that saying he's been injured and not up to doing the full match. And I mean, the good thing, he's in there with the right guys who are pretty much his extended family, who are going to look after him and not hurt him. Like the safest guys to be bloody wrestling with.
Yeah, and it's quite the fall from grace, unfortunately, for Dynamite, because last year he was doing, and of course, when I say last year, I mean WrestleMania 2, just in case people think he was still wrestling last year. He wasn't. He's dead. But during in WrestleMania 2, he's in that brilliant match for the tag team championships, and he's essentially like a human pinball. He's just springing up and down, jumping off the top rope, hitting drop kicks, doing loads of cool stuff. Whereas here, yeah, you can see he's like a shell of what he was a year before, because the
Yeah,
injuries have just been mounting up and mounting up. Like, apparently, even for him just to be able to come out and do this match, he was on a lot of painkillers and a lot of other drugs just to get him through. And this is kind of, unfortunately, the beginning of the end, really, of the British Bulldogs tag team in the WWF. Not long after this, Dynamite's kind of going to be gone. Bulldog, the British Bulldog, Davy Boy Smith, will be gone for a little while as well, but he'll come back obviously and have
yeah.
a massive
He was
singles
out, and I think he
career.
went to
Whereas
rehab and all
Dynamite,
sorts for it multiple times. I think.
that's right, that's right. Whereas poor Dynamite, he ends up going back to Canada. He tries to make an in-ring comeback in Japan and in Stampede Wrestling in Canada, but his body just can't keep up with the
Mm,
schedule. So he eventually ends up, I think, being offered a job as booker for the Canadian territory by Bret Hart's father. Stu Hart employs him as a kind of like in that backstage role. But in terms of an in-ring career, this is pretty much the end of the high times for Dynamite Kid. He'll never be the same as he was, and it's unfortunately pretty much the end of the road for the British Bulldogs tag team is what you're seeing here.
yeah,
But like you said, he was in the ring with the right people here. it's members of his extended family who, at the time, he was still getting along with. So that helped, and yeah, they managed to get through and still have an entertaining match, which the audience
Mm.
absolutely lapped up.
Yeah, like that Bret Hart autobiography. That's full of so great read, but it's full of so many broken dreams and promises and all the things that happen to the people along the way that he's met, and guys that have ended up, bloody suiciding and drug overdosing or just physically beaten to hell in their bodies, and just horrible hearing all that stuff. So we'll go on to our
Yeah.
next one. So we have the Natural Butch Reed defeats Coco Beware. This is one of those very short, brief matches.
Yes. I feel like this is probably the most throwaway match on the entire show.
Kind of in between filler match.
Yeah, definitely. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Butch Reed, and he'd go on to have a great. He had a good run before this, and he'd go on to have another great run as a tag team in Doom with Ron Simmons and WCW. But
Yeah.
here, it's definitely a kind of transitional period for him. I always thought Slick was a weird manager visually because
Yeah,
he's
he
so
turns up in a
tall.
lot of these manias for different people.
He's very charismatic, but he's so tall. Like, he's usually taller than the person he's managing, which is something that's really weird in wrestling because the manager
Yeah.
is almost always supposed to be a little guy. So it's weird seeing a
Mm.
manager that's like taller than the wrestlers. But yeah, it's a kind of total filler squash match. So Coco gets a good reaction with Frankie the Parrot. He was
I do like his
popular for
jacket.
the time. I do like his jacket. Jesse mentions on commentary as well during this that his good friend, the movie producer Barry Blaustein, is a fan of Coco Beware. And funnily enough, years later in 1999, when the Beyond the Mat movie was released, Coco Beware was one of the featured kind of wrestlers in that. So he obviously was a big fan of Coco even back then.
Yeah, so it's short and it's kind of filler, but it's still, I mean, it's still enjoyable to watch. So
Oh
we'll move
yeah.
on to the next one, which is definitely not the filler match, as Intercontinental Championship. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat with George Animal Steel in his corner defeats Macho Man Randy Savage, who has Elizabeth.
What a match. What a match. And we've seen a
What's
couple of
with the
good
outfit
matches
George
on the
Steele is
previous
wearing?
page.
Is what I want to know.
Oh man,
He's
at
like a
least his
pajama
back
ninja
is
or something.
I wish he kept the top on for the whole match because he gets his ugly, hairy back out
Yeah.
during the
It's
match
just such
like
a
he
strange
always
outfit.
does.
Like, is he trying to be a stealth ninja wrestler?
He's so weird, George Steele. I think
He is.
yeah, last time we described him as like a kind of like he's just an old school carnival looking freak show wrestler. He
Yeah,
just looks so
for sure.
bizarre. But I love the entrances for both guys during this match. It's quite clear like Macho Man also falls into that category of heel that the audience absolutely loves because even though he's the
Yeah,
clear
yeah.
cut bad guy, he gets a massive ovation when he makes his way to the ring with Elizabeth. Like, the crowd are really, really into the Macho Man, almost as much as they're into the Steamboat, which I
I
think
thought it
says
was Ryu
something
from
to his
Street Fighter, is it
mentality.
not?
He's got
That
all the
outfit.
Ryu tropes there. If he took those boots off and went barefoot,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's almost there.
Just particularly the red headband as well. It's like if he didn't have the red headband, I'd go, well, maybe it's just a generic karate gi. But he's got the black belt and the red headband.
Oh yeah, of course. And this is just classic 80s wrestling stereotypes, because he looks a bit Asian and he does chops. They're like, he's a karate guy, he's a karate
Yeah,
master,
yeah.
kung fu man.
Yeah, it's
But
weird seeing
seriously
him in
though,
that. I mean, he looks cool, but I'm used to seeing him more in like your Sting sort of tights, like no shirt and tights.
yeah, the WWF definitely gimmicked him up a bit. But still, amazing match. It's It's just it's nearly too good to try and call move by move, which of course would be impossible anyway, and you'd be here a long time. But the pace of this match is just absolutely frantic. It's just go, 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 and each move is just bigger and better than the last one. It just tells a brilliant story of struggle while these two warriors battle it out over the prestigious Intercontinental Championship. And it really was a prestigious championship, which at this point, Macho Man is like the longest reigning champion at this point in time.
Yeah.
That record will soon be beaten, or not soon be beaten, but it will eventually be beaten by the Honky Tonk Man. But by this point in time, Macho is the longest reigning champ. He's coming off like a 14-month run with the belt, which is unheard of. So it's a massive, massive deal to be wrestling for this championship. It's just right there underneath the world title in terms of prestige, and
Mm.
you can tell that the audience are really kind of hanging on every moment because they know it's going to be a big deal. Whoever wins this match, whether it's going to be Macho retaining or Steamboat becoming the new champion, which of course we know does end up happening. Like Steamboat wins a phenomenal match. It's just it's so good. What do you think of this match?
I love it. Like it's been many times mentioned as like pretty much the standout of WrestleMania 3 is like the one that steals the show. And I've had like mates that have been into wrestling all their lives. Or when I was saying last year, I'm going, oh, I'm watching some old WrestleManias and any stuff you recommend. Just about anyone's like, watch bloody Steamboat and Macho Man and Mania 3. It's like an amazing match. Amazing to watch then or now. And famously, old Macho planned out a lot of his matches in written form, which comes up in some of those A&E documentaries. Got a little slide here, some of his actual handwritten notes of getting up to move 200 and something there. Every little move and thing he'd planned out, which the Dragon wasn't too happy about because it's not the way he was used to working. But he ended up saying, well, the match turned out great. So it was a good result for both of them. It was very entertaining. Awesome moves, two fantastic athletes. I could happily watch any day in any matches. But yeah, I love it.
Well, speaking of the Dragon not being too happy, so he wins this belt from Macho, and like we said, Macho at this time he's the longest reigning champion. So you would assume the person who beats him for the belt is now going to be in line for a major push themselves, which apparently was the plan for Steamboat, but it never came to fruition. He ends up dropping the belt about, I think, a month and a half, 2 months later to the Honky Tonk Man. And the reason he lost the belt to the Honky Tonk Man is because his wife was pregnant. He had a baby on the way, and he made the cardinal mistake of going to Vince McMahon and asking for some time off to spend with his new child,
Oh
which, of
dear.
course, in wrestling, there is no time off. You don't take time off unless you're
You
injured
get to
or
see
dead.
that baby
That's
in
doing,
Mania 4. He comes out with them in the
yeah.
entrance.
But so Vince he granted him his time off, but he took the belt off him as a kind of,
Uh, that's
you
stinky.
can call it a punishment. Yeah, he's still like, look, you're not going to be champion anymore. So yeah, Steamboat ends up only being a short term champion, which is it's I always just think it's an interesting kind of side note in the history of this match because it is such a big match and it is such a big moment. And we know that Savage is going to go on to be elevated to the world title. But for Steamboat, the gravy train kind of ended there. He won the belt. He lost it shortly after. He
Mm-hmm.
still hangs around and is featured, but he's never at the same level ever again, which is
Yeah, it's definitely
unfortunate.
unfair. Like it always feels like to me that WWF never. I mean, he has good matches, but like they didn't use him the best. Ends up being used better in the territories and WCW and other non WWF things. He gets to be a bit more in the spotlight and not be cut off at the bloody knees.
Yeah, and he did. He had a much better, like even after this run, he goes back to this down south. He gets into his kind of big feud with Ric Flair, and they've lots of big TV matches that
Mm.
that draw lots of money. So Like Steamboat, he definitely had the tools and the talent to do it at a top tier level,
Oh,
but
he's
just, you know, like
top
we
talent in
said,
my book any day. He's got the charisma, he's got the athleticism, he's got like the I don't want to say the word gimmick, but he's got the showbiz. He's got the showiness and personality to be a good wrestler as well as having the technique and athleticism.
yeah, he just, like I said, he made the unfortunate mistake of asking for some time off. He tried to ask for something that we'd all want if we were in that position, but he forgot he was just in a business that
Nah,
stops for
and
no
Vince
man.
McMahon doesn't think of people as human beings. He wants everyone to be robots that work every day of the year and never break down and do what he says. So
Conversely,
the next match who we got in this one?
we got the Honky Tonk Man, one of my absolute favorites, going up against Jake the Snake, another one of my absolute favorites. So this is a real treat
Yeah,
for
look at
me.
that
And
hair, man, on Jake the Snake. That's some 80s hair.
Jake, this is like peak Jake, I think, for how he looks. Love the hair, love the mustache. He's in
Yeah.
good physical shape. And I have to say, fair play to both of these men because they had a very tough act to follow. Like, imagine being the match
Yeah.
straight after the last match. But the crowd love it. And I think this match is a good contrast to what wrestling can be compared to what we just saw. So what we just saw was a lot of what um got the crowd up was the actual physical action, the moves, the technical aspect of what was going on, the reversals, the back and forth.
Yeah.
Whereas with this match, it's a lot more about the performative pageantry of wrestling. It's
Hmm.
about two big characters because you don't get really bigger characters than Honky Tonk Man and Jake the Snake. They're just so, and I mean this in a good way, they're very cartoony and larger than life. And it's just, they
Yeah.
just jump off the screen. And Honky, what a terrific heel he is. Like, just the perfect gimmick. You're an Elvis impersonator in the late 80s. Everybody hates you for your out of touch musical taste. And he's so good at doing what he does and just getting the crowd to absolutely hate him because once again, like anytime Jake so much lays a finger on him, the crowd just pop, they go crazy because they're just dying to see this man get the shit beat out of him. And I love that type of heat in wrestling. I love it when someone is despised so much that even just the thought of them getting one punch to the face is enough for the audience to get up on their feet and get really excited. That's when you know that you've sucked people in with like some real
Mm.
emotion because all that crowd wanted to see was Honky get murdered because he had attacked Jake numerous times leading up to the show. He even famously hit Jake with a guitar in the back of the head, and the guitar was not gimmick. It wasn't supposed to break. It was a real guitar, so Jake got
Oh.
properly concussed and hurt from taking a real guitar blow to the head. So there was definitely a lot of heat and anticipation for this match. And like I said, fair play to both of them. They managed to keep the crowd involved, even though they were coming off that Macho Man Steamboat match. And it's so tough to do that. It's really, really tough. And it's probably something that's very even more apparent in modern wrestling because in modern wrestling, a lot of the match style almost tries to emulate Savage Steamboat for every match. So you end up having shows that are full of these kind of long-winded, epic, back and forth technical masterpieces. But it gets to the point where you burn out the audience very quickly, and they become
Yeah.
tired, and you know they're
The
just not up
grandma's needs
for
a
the
nap.
matches. Exactly, exactly. But like I said, these two guys, Honky Tonk and Jake, that's not a problem for them because they know who their characters are and they know exactly what they're supposed to do to get the crowd into what they're doing, and they just go out and do it masterfully. And Alice Cooper doesn't completely stink either. He does manage to get in when he needs to and do what he's supposed to do. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not like with Ozzy Osbourne at Romania 2, who does absolutely nothing. At
Yeah,
least Alice
nothing.
Cooper actually got involved and done
He got in the
something.
ring.
And yeah, he got in the ring. He was there. So yeah, he gets he gets a higher grade for me of the two when it comes to Aussie, and Alice beats Aussie when it comes to WrestleMania.
Yeah, I'm glad that he actually got in the ring, because like when I was rewatching this week, the start, I was kind of noting, well, who are the celebrities? And there's not a whole heck of a lot compared to Mania 1 and 2. But I thought, what the fuck are they actually going to do in this one? Are they going to do anything? So when he gets in the ring, I'm like, yes, is he actually getting involved and being part of the theatrics?
And I suppose that's maybe I'm glad you actually mentioned that about celebrities' involvement here. It's one noticeable difference between this and Mania 1 and Mania 2 is
Mm,
they're not really depending on the allure of the celebrity to sell the show. This
yeah.
year, it's all about the WWF itself, not so much the WWF crossing over with celebrities. You know, we don't need Mr. T, we don't need Cyndi Lauper, we don't need outside endorsement. Now the celebrities are coming to us. Apart from one
Hmm.
celebrity, though, do you know that there's one celebrity they wanted on the show that did not appear?
Who was
Do
it?
you know
Like
who
another
that was?
boxer or something? Or?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Ah, yeah, yeah. I think I had
They
heard
actually
something about that.
they wanted him they wanted him especially because of the whole situation with Jesse Ventura doing Predator. They were hopeful that
Yeah.
they'd be able to get Arnold to appear in some capacity, not to really do anything, but just to appear in front of the live crowd,
Hmm.
maybe say hello or whatever. But there were scheduling conflicts and it
Uh,
just didn't end up happening, unfortunately. But I would have loved to have seen Arnold
yeah, that's a
on this
shame.
show, but you know,
Yeah, I think he turns up some 90s shows in the audiences. I'm not sure if
that's
it was
right. That's
WCW or
right.
who, but he's at some ones where he turned up. But I think he's just genuinely there in the audience, not so
Yeah,
much for an
he
appearance.
I think when he's governor of California in 99 or 2000, he makes an appearance on WWF SmackDown.
Mm.
And then later on, I think when that awful Terminator Genesis movie was
Oh,
being promoted, he made a couple of
bought that for
appearances
$2
to
on
help promote
Blu-ray.
that.
Don't hate me.
Yeah. I
Just
know,
because it was
I
on
know.
sale, it's still
I'll probably
terrible.
watch it again. Yeah, $2 too much.
Uh, but yeah, it was
Yeah, but
fun match this
fun
one.
times.
Watch Jake Snake any day.
I love
Not a
Jake.
honky tonk fan. I like in that old Jaleco 2D video game beating him up in that. It's like,
Yeah, when Honky, like, don't get me wrong, as a kid, I hated Honky, but as an adult, I can totally appreciate just how good he was at being a heel.
hmm,
Like the man really knew how to get people to hate him. He was just a master at it, and he's eventually going to go on because, like we were saying, poor Ricky Steamboat, he's not going to get a long run with the Intercontinental belt, but Honky Tonk Man he's going to become the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time, or at least up until a few months ago, he's actually been beaten by a man named Gunther, who's the current
yeah,
WWE Intercontinental Champion. But you know, for when it mattered, he was the longest
yeah,
reigning
yeah,
Intercontinental Champion of all time. And I'll tell you another thing I'll say about Honky is he was able to draw money as Intercontinental Champion because people wanted to see him lose the championship. And the
yeah,
reason that that reign carried on so long was because they were just making so much money. He was able to main event house shows with Intercontinental Championship matches. And the whole premise was just that they were essentially selling tickets because the audience were just dying to see him lose the belt, which never happened until he eventually did lose it to the Warrior. But that's a story for another time.
yeah. Well, that's good wrestling, good entertainment. That's what you want. People give a shit about the match, whether they win or lose, but they want to care about it. So we go to the next one. We got Nikolai Volkov and Iron Sheik, who defeat the Killer Bees by disqualification. I love the disqualifications at WrestleMania.
Yeah, especially back at these early WrestleManias. I love seeing this rubbish in the ring that the audience are throwing in because they clearly
That's
despise
only
the
a little
foreign
bit.
heels so
It's
much.
funny. It's funny when you watch like this kind of stuff, and there's a bit of rubbish here, and then you think, "Oh, that's very distasteful." But then other places, people are throwing bottles at your head, so it's a very different crowd.
I'm digging the yellow and black Nike that Jim Brunzell is
Yeah,
modeling here as well. They're pretty cool. I always chuckle when I watch this match because there's a famous interview on YouTube out there with Iron Sheik where he talks about this match. The name of the video clip is just called Iron Sheik Goes Nuts. I'm not going to I'm not going to quote any of the verbiage that's used in that video, but suffice to say, I would advise anybody who, if you're listening or watching to this now and you don't know what I'm talking about, go on to YouTube, type in the sentence "Iron Sheik goes nuts" and you'll see exactly what
yeah.
I'm talking about. It's a shoot interview he does talking about this match. He was not fond of working with the Killer Bees apparently, and wanted to do all sorts of bad things to them in real life, which I shall not repeat. Oh, there's a real Killer Bee right there,
He'll kill you
a
good. He's
CB
a killer snake bee. He's got snake
or a
hands and
snake bee.
wings. Very deadly.
Yeah, the Killer Bees. Yeah, we saw them briefly at WrestleMania 2. They were in the Battle Royal with the American football players, Jumpin' Jim Brunzella and Brian Blair. Kind of an undercard tag team, lost a lot more than they won. This match is definitely an example of a match, although it's not a bad match in any way. It's clearly put in just to bring the audience down a bit and get the energy levels
Yeah,
back
yeah,
before the main event, because they've just had the Savage and Steamboat Classic and then the very enjoyable Honky Tonk and Jake match. So they need to save a bit of energy for what's going to be coming in the main event. So this match, it's fairly by the numbers, Slick's back out
it's more
accompanying the
traditional.
the
Yeah,
Sheik. Traditional heel baby face, tag match, and no complaints. Like I say in the like I just grin watching the match because I can hear the Iron Sheik's voice in my head talking about. I've listened to him talk about the match so many times that I nearly know his thoughts about the match more than the match
yeah,
itself. So I do always have a little chuckle. He wants to
yeah. They're
put
all
them in
solid
the camel
performers.
clutch and break his back,
Yeah, yeah.
make
Iron
him
Sheik's
humble.
awesome. I can happily listen to him talk about whatever. He could be reading the bloody dictionary. I could listen to.
Yeah, good fun, Cheeky. Rest in peace.
So I might watch. Wanted to watch a documentary a year ago, and then the bloody network went away here. So it was gone for 6, 8 months, and then they piggybacked it onto some other streaming thing here, so I could finally watch the bloody wrestling again. And just today, before we started this, I found some of those A&E biographies. It's like an American, they're made for the American audience, and so mostly can't watch them elsewhere. But I found they actually were on the network thing I get here, but they were under a different weird name that came up on Google or not on the app. So I'm gonna try and watch. I want to watch for the Sheik and the Dusty Rhodes ones, were the next ones I was going to watch like a year ago before they took the network away.
Yeah, they have a few good
So
ones. Those A&E
yeah,
biographies,
cool.
definitely worth a watch.
So going on to the main
Here we go.
event, got
Oh
Hulk
yeah.
Hogan, Andre, with old Bobby the Brain in the corner.
And here we are. This is the match that drew the money and that drew the big crowd. I actually I wrote down because I think before this match or shortly before it, Mean Gene actually comes out to do the official attendance number or the
Mm-hmm.
official attendance number. What a
Yeah,
joke.
the official.
This is the number that they say. So the number quoted is 93,173. I have it written down in my notebook
Yep,
here.
yep.
93,173 people supposedly are here to witness this match. Before we get in actually to the meat of the match itself, another interesting little tidbit about Mania 3, which I thought was relevant. So this is an event, it's been broadcast on pay-per-view all across America, right?
Yeah.
Except it's not, apparently.
Oh,
There's one
it's a
state
twist.
where it's actually not being broadcast at all, and it's quite hard to actually watch on television, and that's the state that it's being held in. So
What?
if you were living
What?
if you're living in the area, the only
Oh,
way
did they have a
for you
problem
to
with
watch
it,
the
like a
show.
technical problem, or
No, no, it
no?
was
What
done
was
on
it?
purpose. It was done on
Oh, on
purpose
purpose.
to ensure that they got a sellout crowd because they were worried that
Ah, so they didn't stay home.
exactly, they were worried if
That makes sense.
people had the choice, they'd go for the easy option of just ordering it on pay-per-view and they wouldn't drive to the arena. So
Yeah,
they blacked
that's
out
it.
the pay-per-view availability all around Detroit so that anybody
Wow.
local really who wanted to go to the show or wanted to watch the show, you had to physically go to the building, buy a ticket, and go to the show. And that way, and it probably worked. It's probably the reason why they jammed the building to capacity is because literally
Makes
anybody
sense.
local who wanted to watch. So there you go. I just thought that was an interesting piece of information I'd throw out there before
Oh,
we
that's
got into
awesome bit
this
of trivia,
match.
man. I love that kind of stuff. It says, I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page, which is not always terribly accurate, but it says almost a million. These are estimated million fans watching the event at 160 closed circuit locations in North America. The number of people watching pay per view estimated at several million. WWF generated 1.6 million in ticket sales, so that were the local sales. Estimated 10.3 million from the pay per view money. So that was the big money, but they wanted the crowds. I mean, let's say they made, let's say they had that pay per view and people stay at home and they made more money. If the arena was empty, it would look like a bullshit show. It wouldn't be very good,
Yeah.
even if they made money.
They needed it. They needed that visual of the
Yeah,
packed arena, and it was a good
don't
plan.
want to watch none of those
Because don't
COVID wrestling matches.
yeah, because don't get me wrong, I'm sure Hogan and Andre by themselves easily probably would have drawn maybe even 50 or 60,000 people, but just to make
Yeah,
sure you got that extra capacity filled, they cut the pay-per-view feed and made sure that you went and saw that show in person. Hulkster.
I love seeing the crowd up close in some of these photos here. And seeing the variety of people, it's not just like, annoying nerds like us. It's like a whole variety of different people are going, actually enjoying the show.
Yeah, real people
Yeah,
of
real people.
varying ages
People don't
and
just live on their bloody
demographics.
computers. Nerd
Yeah.
freaks.
So, folks, if you are a fan of wrestling, you've probably watched this match. If you do consider yourself a wrestling fan and you haven't watched this match, turn off this video now and go watch the match first because it's kind of historically significant. You really probably should watch it if you consider yourself a fan of the game. But you know, if Savage and Steamboat was the technical masterclass that was technically the best match on the show, this main event between Hogan and Andre was the money match. It was what
Yeah,
the show
it's
was
a big
built
drama.
around, and drama it was because it's a story of friendship torn apart. You've got the evil Bobby the Brain Heenan, who's gotten in the ear of Andre the
Evil.
Giant and turned him against his best friend Hulk Hogan. And poor Hulk Hogan has the T-shirt and the cross ripped from his chest by his turncoat friend Andre the Giant, and so much drama heading into the match. But behind the scenes, there was a little bit of drama as well because
Yeah.
at this point, unfortunately, in his life, Andre the Giant is not doing physically well, and
No, it's not.
in order to even to
Not
get as
even see.
far as having this match, I believe he had back surgery months before this match, which was of a lot of it was fairly intensive surgery, as you could imagine, for a man that size to have to go through. And even though Andre is kind of famous for this look that we see him here with the black singlet, he's actually wearing that black singlet to cover a back brace that is actually underneath it.
Ah,
Because he literally he'd be so doubled over without the support of the brace, he'd actually have lost a lot of his height. So the brace is essentially keeping him standing upright. It's also rumored as well that Andre the Giant actually consumed 14 bottles of wine before he participated in this match. And if
I'd
that's
believe it because
true,
he consumed
I
a
have
lot of wine
nothing but
in
yeah,
general.
I I have nothing but respect for the man, by the way, if that's true, because sometimes people, they don't really, I think, believe you when you say things like, "Oh, he's in really bad shape. He can barely walk." They're like, "Well, how is he able to do all this stuff? How is he able to get into the ring and do all this stuff if he's so bad?" And it's like, well, the reason is because he's on lots of drugs, lots of alcohol, lots of painkillers, and he's literally got a steel rod holding his back together. That's the only way he's able to do any of these things. And even the fact that he is doing these things, he's going to suffer for it afterwards. His body's going to be even more ravaged and torn than it is already. So I've nothing but respect for Andre the Giant, and his toughness for actually going through and competing in this match. And there is a lot of bit like a rumor and hearsay saying that there was doubts whether Andre was actually going to actually lay down for Hogan and lose the match and let him pick him up and slam him and do all that stuff. But I think in reality, the main concern wasn't so much that Andre was not willing to lose to Hogan. It was more concerned that he may not be physically able to lose to Hogan, because he
Yeah,
may not actually physically be able to get himself up in the air for the slam because he's in such bad condition. But like a true warrior, he just powers through, and everything he does, he still manages to pull it off believably. The audience are with the match every step of the way. Anytime Hogan's in jeopardy, there's a tension in the air. Anytime Hogan's making a comeback, there's a real fever pitch of energy. And of course, it all builds to the crescendo of Hogan finally managing to lift the Giant up high, body slam him, which is a major, major moment. Even though it technically had happened before, it had happened off screen, it had happened in Japan, it happened in Mexico, um, even happened on WWF shows
yeah,
in the very early 80s. But of course, if it doesn't happen on television, it didn't happen at all. So as far
yeah,
as the mainstream audience is concerned, Hogan becomes the first man to ever body slam and defeat Andre the Giant. And it's a major, major passing of the torch moment and a massive win in Hogan's career, because Andre at this point, like from a mainstream television point of view, he was someone who never really lost. Like he'd essentially been undefeated in WWF for like 15 years or something like that. It was like a ridiculously long streak he had. So for Hogan to overcome the odds and manage to beat this giant and retain the championship, it was a massive, massive feel good moment for that audience. And like I said, like I can't heap enough praise on Andre, just to be able to get through this match, to do what he did physically in the ring. Because people, and I get, sometimes I'm the angry man yelling at a cloud, the angry old man. But a modern fan may kind of look at this match and be like, what's the big deal? It's kind of slow paced. They don't really do much. But they don't need to do much, because
yeah,
they've already sold the idea of what the match is about and what the story is. And they do everything that they need to do to get that story across to the live crowd and to the viewing audience. And in my estimation, they pretty much do it perfectly. It's a really iconic match and a really iconic moment when Andre gets slammed.
yeah. Like it's not a match you go and looking for a technical match because Hogan's famously never been a fantastic wrestler on a technical level, and Andre was, even in his prime, was not the most coordinated of men, but he's definitely very strong and definitely a big draw for right through the 70s into the 80s. Very popular wrestler, very beloved in the ring and outside of the ring. Most people speak very highly of him as being a good person. So, Kind of the opposite of Hogan, really. I mean, he's being the heel here, but in real life, he's I'd say he's the better man for sure. But as
Oh
a
yeah.
super entertaining match because it's all about. It's not about who's doing the flashy move or who's doing some acrobatic bullshit and breaking your nose, doing a diving headbutt off a ladder, or any of that nonsense. It's all about telling the story in front of you, like watching a play or a real live show. You're seeing the story unfold in front of you, and it's a long story because it's not just about the friendship of Hogan and Andre and the turning and from hero to heel. It's this long story that stretches really right back to the 70s. It's the story of the death of the territories and the launch of the WWF into these big like pay-per-views and WrestleManias. It's symbolic of all of that.
It is, and it's the one match they will always go back to, and the one moment they will always go back to as this kind of peak WWF, mania, no pun intended, because it was
Yeah.
just they just were on fire. They were just on fire, and
Yeah.
like I was saying earlier, they maybe needed the rub of the celebrities for Mania 1 and 2, but they didn't need them for Mania 3. Like Hogan and Andre alone were what the draw of Mania 3 was.
Only
Even if
celebrity counts is right there,
oh yeah, Bobby the Brain,
Bobby.
what a man, what a man. And
I'd be the fan. If I was at this event, I'd be the one running and giving Bobby a hug and go, "We love you, Bobby." It's like, how could anyone hate him?
I actually forgot to mention earlier on, it popped into my head and then it went out again when we were talking about the Billy Jack Haynes and Hercules
Yeah.
match. Bobby the Brain in the interview before that match keeps on calling him Billy Jerk Haynes. I just couldn't stop laughing. Like, Billy Jerk Haynes.
Yeah, I love all his
He just
puns and
always had the
silly stuff
best
he comes
ones.
out with. He's
He's
like
so
he's
good.
like someone's
He's so
granddad,
good.
He's so charming and hilarious, and
Yeah, even in later years when he's kind of drunk on commentary in WCW and he's still
mm,
so quick-witted and
he
entertaining.
is. I love his
He's just a
WCW
legend of a
commentary.
man. Yeah, I love Bobby. He's
They,
the best.
they even had it in some of those early video games on PS1. Even had some of like him and Tony Schiavone who had the recording canned commentary in the games, and even that had some of the good snappy one-liners and it comes out with. Um, Here's the bit from earlier talking about the iconic moment when he does get lifted up and slammed and then takes the old leg drop, of course.
Yeah. The slam heard around the world
Yeah.
when the immovable force met the no, what's it? The immovable object meets the unstoppable force, and yeah, the body slam
I always
happened.
get it
And
confused.
yeah, of course, he still had to pin him off the leg drop. The leg drop had to be the actual finish because it is Hogan's move after all. So
Yeah.
I think when Andre got slammed in Japan and in Mexico, the slam was usually the finish of the match because it was such a whoa, I can't believe they managed to lift them moment,
Yeah.
and that was enough for the people to believe.
Makes sense.
But Hogan just had to get that little bit of extra, got to do the leg drop, brother,
Yeah,
had
he
to get
hasn't
his
washed
own
his
stamp on it.
boots in a month, so that's what finishes you off. You just pass out from the smell.
I'll tell you, if I was after necking 14 bottles of wine, I don't think I would be able to do this match without having to have at least like 3 or 4 toilet breaks.
Andre will get his revenge. He'll be with Hogan later on in an elevator, and he'll get his real revenge in there.
And speaking of revenge, this is not the last time we will see these two square off. And on a future Bobbish Joe show episode, when we are covering possibly the 4th WrestleMania, we will see that these two men's paths cross again. So I do look forward to talking about the rematch.
Yeah, that's certainly we'll be doing that in the near future. But yeah, I love this like shot here because it's a nice still photo, so we can actually see what the hell's going on. It's not blurry like some of those terrible video qualities. I just love the shot here. They're just like pointing and just the whole drama of it, and just love it. And then we don't know what's going on in the ring, but Bobby's not happy. They're rolling out. Hogan's making some quite strange expressions here. It's
Yeah,
probably
nothing
time to
like watching Hogan flexing to the tune of Real American Classic. Taking a dump, brother.
And this was from a promotional image there, which I thought was very tasteful. This black and white one here, Mania 3 with Bobby and Andre. And just the contrast too, just seeing the size of them next to each other, like so good.
What a trooper! Two legends lost. Rest in peace, both Bobby the Brain and Andre. They were just an excellent combination. Like Brain was perfect for Andre as a mouthpiece. He just fitted him so well, and no, they both made their mark. And once again, it's probably telling that we've spoken a lot more highly of them than we have of Hogan. So read into that what you want.
Yeah, and there's the Andre the Giant documentary came out a few years ago. That's definitely worth a watch too. Like all documentaries, there's stuff that's biased in it, but overall it's pretty good and pretty good at actually telling you it's about the man rather than the character, and it's behind the scenes real life stuff. Like absolutely worth watching.
Yeah, I think Andre led a fascinating life, even before he ever entered into the wrestling business. So yeah, I'd say to anybody, if you happen to be watching this and you're not really familiar with wrestling or Andre the Giant and you've stuck with us this far, maybe actually give the Andre the Giant documentary a spin, because it's just a really
Or the
interesting
Princess Bride.
story. Or the Princess Bride is always a good watch. Definitely a favorite in my household. But yeah, he was quite the man, a true giant, both physically and figuratively. He was, a giant among men, and a true legend.
Did some amazing farts as well. Legendary
Yeah,
farts.
he did some legendary tequila-fueled farts in the rings of Mexico, which apparently his opponents were none too pleased with. Because there's always that famous Andre the Giant spot, where he might knock you into the turnbuckle and you kind of fall down,
Yep.
so he'll back his backside into you.
Yeah,
Apparently, if he's had a few tequilas, you don't want to be doing that spot in a match with Andre, because you'll get a full on, 1-ton force farce right in your face.
But yeah, Andre, I think, is just a beautiful man, beautiful human being, unique, one of a kind individual. And I'm glad, despite the being towards the end of his career and the pains he went through and his body failing him, that he was able to go out and be in the spotlight and put on a good show that's memorable and still worth watching today. The big man.
Show, what a time.
Yeah. So we've got some other chats coming up. We're talking about movies and other bullshit. But next month, because I've already made it, I can go, there it is there, Mania 4. So that's what we're talking about in probably about a month's time or roundabout. And Bobby will be back, and Andre will be back, and Macho will be back.
Or Bobby there waving the Irish flag in distress,
Yeah.
international.
Yeah, I just snuck
symbol
that
of
in there,
terror.
It's that. I put two in there. There's another one in the bottom right corner as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just little graphics I found in camera. I thought, oh, what can I do with these? I thought, oh no, I'll put him in there, like he's waving he's joined the Boba Joe show.
I'm sure he would have been a fan.
Yeah,
As long as he had a few drinks before he watched it or listened
yeah, a
to
few
us.
drinks always helps. So I guess that's about it for today's one. Thank you for Mark for the awesome Mania knowledge. Like, I'm a novice when it comes to these. Like, I've watched them a couple of times, but then I got memory like bloody spaghetti Fruit Loops, and even when I make notes, I still forget shit. So but I've got, like, I'm reading wrestler biographies and autobiographies and stuff in the background. And some guys I can remember more about, and other guys I'm only just starting to learn stuff about.
Yeah, well, look, we've always plenty of time to learn and discuss these things.
Yep.
And for me, I just love just like with the movies, just like with the games, I always just love going back and having a reason to either rewatch
Mm,
or replay or listen to something again that I haven't in a while, and just have a chat about it. And we've plenty more classic manias and classic
yeah, plenty.
movies and shows to chat with.
I was
So
thinking
long may it
December.
last.
Thinking December. I don't. I forgot to ask you. Do you actually like Jingle All the Way? Because not everyone likes that movie.
I like Jingle All the Way. I like Jingle All the
Because the
Way.
other option is, or we could do both in December, is of course the National Lampoons with Chevy Chase, like the
And I like
Christmas
them too.
vacation. I thought
So
either we could do both of them in December, perhaps for Christmas themed stuff.
special Christmas double bill of Jingle All the
Yeah,
Way and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Because both movies are watched yearly in this house anyway. So
yeah, yeah.
especially
I watched them.
Christmas
Yeah.
Vacation
Rebel
is
Bad.
one of my wife's favorites. So
Yeah, cool. Well, we'll see. We'll see about that for December. We've got other stuff between now and then. So I'll say goodbye.
all right, folks, take care. Don't forget to take your vitamins and say your prayers, and you'll get strong enough to lift
Yeah.
Andre the Giant.
Hit the likes and hit the subscribes and share videos, and then you'll have an amazing career of telling lies professionally. Hopefully not. Okay, catch you next
Mania
time, guys.
Hulkamania. See you guys.